In the year 2087, humanity was still taking its first shaky steps into the vastness of space. Earth had just begun to establish colonies on Mars and mining operations in the asteroid belt when an event occurred that would change everything. On a cold December morning, astronomers at the Lunar Observatory noticed something unusual, a cluster of objects moving rapidly toward Neptune's orbit. At first, they thought it might be a rogue comet or some natural phenomenon. But as the days passed, the truth became clearer and far more terrifying. The objects were not comets. They were ships, hundreds of them, sleek and menacing, gliding through space with unnatural precision. Their design was alien, jagged, and asymmetrical, like shards of broken glass fused together. Each ship pulsed faintly with an eerie blue light, casting long shadows across the void. Scientists scrambled to identify the vessels, but there was no mistaking their purpose. This was no exploration mission. This was an invasion force. Panic spread across Earth as news of the alien fleet reached the public. Governments called emergency meetings, militaries went on high alert, and people around the world watched anxiously as telescopes zoomed in on the approaching armada. The aliens didn't waste time making contact. Just as the fleet reached Neptune's orbit, a signal broadcast on every frequency imaginable. It wasn't in any human language, but the message was clear enough. A deep, resonant voice boomed across radios, televisions, and even personal devices. Surrender your resources or face annihilation. The words sent shockwaves through humanity. People huddled in their homes, unsure whether to believe what they were hearing. Was this real? Could aliens really be threatening Earth? For many, the answer came too soon. Within hours, reports began pouring in of attacks on remote space stations and mining outposts near Saturn. The invaders, who called themselves the Quartary Dominion, showed no mercy. Entire colonies were wiped out in seconds, reduced to drifting debris by devastating energy weapons. Dr. Alana Voss, a leading astrophysicist based in Antarctica, watched the chaos unfold from her lab. She had spent years studying anomalies in deep space, searching for clues about the universe's hidden secrets. Now, she found herself staring at data streams showing the destruction wrought by the Quartary. Something about their attack troubled her. Why would such an advanced species target humanity now, when Earth posed little threat to them? What did they want? Alana's curiosity led her to analyze the transmission sent by the Quartary. Most scientists dismissed it as a simple ultimatum, but Alana suspected there was more to it. Using specialized software, she broke down the signal into its component frequencies. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. Embedded within the message was another layer of information, a second message, meant only for those who knew how to look for it. This hidden message was fragmented and cryptic, but one phrase stood out. Danger lies dormant within your kind. Alana puzzled over the meaning until she remembered a project she had worked on years earlier. Back then, researchers had detected strange fluctuations in energy readings during experiments near Jupiter. The fluctuations defied explanation, seeming to come from nowhere and disappearing just as quickly. At the time, the team had labeled it a glitch and moved on. But now, Alana realized it might have been something else entirely, a glimpse of a power far beyond human understanding. She dug up old files and cross-referenced them with current observations of the Quartary fleet. The pieces started falling into place. The Quartary weren't here because they needed Earth's resources. They were afraid of what humanity might become. Decades ago, humans had unknowingly tapped into a mysterious force during those failed experiments, a force so volatile it could destabilize entire star systems if misused. The Quartary must have detected traces of this power and decided to act before it grew stronger. Alana shared her findings with General Marcus Hawley, the head of Earth's newly formed United Defense Coalition, UDC. He listened intently, his weathered face betraying both skepticism and concern. You're telling me, he said slowly, that these aliens are scared of us? In a way, yes, Elena replied. But we should be scared too. If we don't figure out how to control this, whatever it is, we won't stand a chance against them. General Hawley nodded grimly. Time was running out. The Korthari were already advancing toward Earth's inner solar system, destroying anything in their path. Without a miracle, humanity would be crushed under the weight of their superior technology. But Elena refused to give up. Deep inside her lab, buried beneath layers of ice and secrecy, she began working on a bold plan. If humanity couldn't match the Korthari's firepower, perhaps they could find another way to fight back, one rooted in the very force that had drawn the invaders to Earth in the first place. As the days ticked by, the stakes grew higher. Cities prepared for evacuation, families said tearful goodbyes, and governments debated surrender. Yet amid the fear and uncertainty, a spark of hope remained. Somewhere in the frozen wastes of Antarctica, a lone scientist toiled away, determined to unlock the secrets of a dangerous power. Little did she know, her work would shape the fate of humanity and the galaxy itself. The Korthari fleet continued its relentless march toward Earth, leaving destruction in its wake. Space stations that had once been bustling hubs of activity were now silent, their skeletal remains floating like ghost ships in the void. The alien invaders showed no signs of slowing down. Every day brought fresh reports of attacks on colonies near Saturn and Jupiter, each strike more devastating than the last. Humanity was on the brink of collapse, and fear gripped the planet like a vice. On Earth, chaos reigned. Governments argued over how to respond to the crisis, while citizens panicked in the streets. Some called for surrender, believing it was the only way to save what remained of humanity. Others demanded resistance, urging leaders to fight back against the Korthari at any cost. But division ran deep. Nations squabbled over resources, military strategies, and who should take charge. Without unity, Earth's chances of survival seemed slim. Amid this turmoil, a glimmer of hope emerged from an unlikely alliance. A group of rogue militaries, private corporations, and underground resistance fighters came together under a single banner, the United Terran Alliance, UTA. Led by General Marcus Hawley, a hardened veteran with decades of experience, the UTA became humanity's last line of defense. Though underfunded and outnumbered, the coalition represented Earth's best chance to stand against the Korthari. General Hawley wasted no time organizing the ragtag forces. He knew they couldn't win through sheer numbers or firepower. Humanity's technology was woefully outdated compared to the Korthari's advanced weaponry. Instead, he focused on speed, stealth, and ingenuity. Pilots were trained to exploit weaknesses in the Korthari fleet. Engineers worked around the clock to retrofit old ships with experimental weapons. And spies infiltrated enemy communications to gather intelligence. It was a desperate gamble, but it was all they had. While the UTA prepared for battle, Dr. Elena Voss labored tirelessly in her secret lab beneath Antarctica. Her discovery of the mysterious force hidden within Earth's experiments years earlier had opened up new possibilities. She named it Erebus Energy, after the ancient Greek god of darkness and shadow. Erebus wasn't just a source of raw power, it was adaptive, capable of bending matter and energy to its user's will. If harnessed correctly, it could level the playing field against the Korthari. But controlling Erebus proved far more difficult than Elena had anticipated. The energy was unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous. Early tests resulted in catastrophic failures, causing explosions that nearly destroyed the lab. Worse still, Elena realized that using Erebus required a connection between human consciousness and the fabric of reality, itself a bond so intense it risked consuming the user entirely. Despite these challenges, she pressed on, driven by the knowledge that humanity's survival depended on her success. As weeks turned into months, Tensions reached a breaking point. The Core-3 launched a massive assault on Luna Prime, Earth's largest lunar colony and a critical hub for space exploration. The attack caught the UTA off guard, forcing them into a desperate battle to defend the colony. Fighter pilots swarmed the skies, weaving through enemy fire as explosions lit up the dark expanse of space. Ground troops fought valiantly to hold key positions, but the Core-3's superior numbers overwhelmed them. Among the defenders was Captain Rhea Torres, a daring pilot with a reputation for taking risks. Once a smuggler operating in the outer reaches of the solar system, Rhea had joined the UTA after losing her family to a Core-3 raid. Her skills behind the controls of a fighter ship were unmatched, and she quickly became a symbol of hope for the resistance. During the battle for Luna Prime, she led a squadron of volunteers on a suicide mission to disable one of the Core-3's largest battleships. Against all odds, they succeeded, but at a heavy cost. Most of Rhea's team perished in the effort, and she barely escaped with her life. Back on Earth, news of the battle spread like wildfire. Casualties mounted and morale plummeted. Many began to doubt whether humanity could prevail against such a formidable foe. But amidst the despair, Elena unveiled her most ambitious project yet, the Erebus Core, designed to channel the immense power of Erebus energy. The core was a sleek metallic sphere etched with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with a dark light. Though untested, it represented humanity's only chance to turn the tide. General Hale made the bold decision to deploy the core aboard the UTA's flagship, the Vanguard Dawn. The ship was old and battered, patched together from salvaged parts, but it carried the hopes of billions. As preparations for the final stand began, Elena faced her own internal struggles. She knew the risks of using the core firsthand. Each test had left her physically weakened, and the mental toll was even greater. Yet she refused to step back, knowing that failure meant extinction for humanity. The stage was set for a showdown unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Core-3 fleet loomed closer, its ships blotting out the stars. On Earth, cities braced for impact, their skies filled with evacuation shuttles ferrying civilians to underground bunkers. In space, the remnants of the UTA gathered near Saturn, ready to make their stand. Pilots kissed photographs of loved ones before climbing into their cockpits. Engineers double-checked every bolt and wire, praying their makeshift weapons would hold up against the Core-3's might. Elena stood alone in the Vanguard Dawn's command center, staring at the glowing orb of the Erebus core. She felt a mix of dread and determination as she placed her hand on its surface. For weeks, she had studied the core, learning its secrets and preparing herself for what lay ahead. But nothing could truly prepare her for the storm about to break dawn as the Core-3 fleet entered firing range. General Hale gave the order to engage. The battle erupted with a fury that shook the very foundations of space. Human ships darted between the massive alien vessels, unleashing salvos of missiles and laser fire. Explosions lit up the void, creating brief bursts of brilliance against the endless blackness. Pilots screamed over comms as their comrades fell, their voices cracking with grief and rage. Amid the chaos, Elena activated the Erebus core for the first time. At first, nothing happened. Then, a low hum filled the air, growing louder and louder until it vibrated through the ship's hull. The core pulsed with energy, sending tendrils of black light snaking outward. Elena felt a surge of power coursing through her body, overwhelming her senses. Pain shot through her limbs, but she gritted her teeth and held on, focusing all her strength on directing the energy dot outside the Vanguard Dawn. The effects were immediate and devastating. Streams of dark energy erupted from the ship, lashing out at the Core-3 fleet. Ships that moments ago had seemed invincible crumbled under the onslaught. Hulls shattered, engines exploded, and entire vessels disintegrated into clouds of debris. The Core 3, caught off guard by the sudden shift in momentum, scrambled to regroup. For the first time since their arrival, the invaders faltered. Their commander, Admiral Zekra, transmitted a message to his forces. Retreat. This species is too dangerous. His voice carried a note of alarm, something none of his subordinates had heard before. The Core 3 fleet began pulling back, retreating deeper into space, but victory came at a cost. The Erebus Core's activation had destabilized the surrounding region of space, creating ripples that extended far beyond the battlefield. Strange phenomena began occurring. Stars flickered, planets shifted slightly in their orbits, and gravitational fields fluctuated unpredictably. Elena collapsed to the floor of the command center, exhausted and trembling. She had succeeded in driving the Core 3 away, but she knew the consequences of wielding Erebus would haunt humanity for years to come. As the dust settled, both literally and figuratively, Earth breathed a collective sigh of relief. The immediate threat had passed, but the scars of war ran deep. Cities lay in ruins, families mourned their dead, and questions lingered about the future. What had humanity unleashed? And what other dangers awaited them in the vast, uncharted depths of space? For now, though, there was a fragile sense of hope. Against all odds, humanity had stood its ground and fought back. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but one thing was clear. Earth was no longer the helpless target it had once been. Armed with a dangerous force, humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming a galactic power, and nothing would ever be the same again. The battle near Saturn had ended, but its aftermath left humanity shaken. The Core 3 fleet's retreat was a victory, yet it felt hollow. The UTR's forces were battered and broken, their ships reduced to floating husks riddled with damage. Pilots returned to their bases weary and wounded, their faces etched with the weight of loss. Entire squad ships had been wiped out in the fight, and those who survived carried the memories of friends lost in fiery explosions or swallowed by the cold void of space. Dr. Elena Voss sat alone in the Vanguard Dawn's command center, staring at the Erebus Core. It pulsed faintly now, quieter than during the battle, but its presence filled the room with an oppressive energy. Her hands trembled as she reached out to touch it again. Activating the core had drained her physically and mentally, leaving her body weak and her mind foggy. She could still feel the echoes of its power coursing through her, a dark, endless tide that threatened to pull her under if she let her guard down. Elena knew the truth about the core. It wasn't just a weapon. It was alive in some way, feeding off the life force of those who used it. Each time she connected with it, she felt pieces of herself slipping away. Yet, without it, humanity would have been annihilated. The Core 3 had underestimated Earth, thinking they could crush humanity with ease. Instead, they had faced a force they couldn't comprehend, a power so raw and primal it turned their ships into dust. General Marcus Halle entered the command center, his boots echoing softly on the metal floor. His face was grim, lined with exhaustion and sorrow. He had seen too much death in his lifetime, and this battle had added another heavy burden to his shoulders. "We did it," he said quietly, though his tone lacked triumph. "They're gone." "For now," Elena replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't look up at him. Her eyes remained fixed on the core. "This isn't over. You know that." Halle nodded. He had read the reports from the battle. The Core 3 had retreated, but not before transmitting messages to unknown destinations. Their commander, Admiral Zekra, had warned his people about humanity's newfound danger. Whatever the Core 3 feared, others might soon learn of it too. And if there was one thing Halle understood about war, it was that fear often led to retaliation, and retaliation came with overwhelming force. As news of the victory spread across Earth, celebrations erupted in cities and colonies alike. People poured into streets, cheering and lighting fireworks despite the ongoing repairs to damaged infrastructure. For the first time in months, hope flickered in the hearts of billions. The Quartary had been defeated, and the Erebus core had proven itself unstoppable. Humanity had shown the galaxy it wouldn't go down without a fight. But behind closed doors, tension simmered. Governments argued over control of the core, each wanting to claim it for themselves. Military leaders debated whether to use it preemptively against other potential threats. Corporations saw dollar signs, envisioning ways to monetize the technology. Even within the UTA, factions emerged, some advocating for peace, while others pushed for aggression. The fragile unity forged during the battle began to crack under the weight of ambition and greed. Amid the chaos, Captain Ria Torres found herself adrift. Her role in disabling the Quartary battleship had made her a hero, but fame brought no comfort. She spent her days wandering the ruins of Luna Prime, where the scars of war were still fresh. Craters pockmarked the surface, and skeletal remains of buildings stood like tombstones marking the lives lost. Ria couldn't shake the guilt that gnawed at her insides. Too many pilots had died under her command. She told herself it was worth it. They had bought humanity time, but the cost weighed heavily on her soul. One evening, as she stood gazing at Earth, hanging in the black sky, a message arrived from General Hawley. He wanted to see her immediately. Reluctantly, she boarded a shuttle and traveled to the Vanguard Dawn, where she found both Hawley and Elena waiting for her in the command center. The air between them was tense, thick with unspoken words. "We need you," Hawley said bluntly, cutting straight to the point. "The core worked once, but we don't know how long it'll last or what else is out there. We need someone ready to lead our forces if the Quartary come back." Ria hesitated. The thought of returning to battle made her stomach churn. But deep down, she knew he was right. If humanity wanted to survive, it needed fighters willing to stand in the line of fire. "What do you want me to do?" she asked finally. "Train new pilots," Hawley replied. "Teach them everything you know. And keep flying. We can't afford to lose our edge." For weeks, Ria threw herself into training recruits. She pushed them harder than anyone else, demanding perfection and punishing mistakes. Some resented her harsh methods, but none could deny the results. Under her guidance, a new generation of pilots emerged, skilled and fearless. They called themselves the Black Wings, inspired by the dark energy of the Erebus core. Meanwhile, Elena continued her work with the core, determined to understand its limits. She discovered that prolonged exposure to its energy caused strange side effects, not just in humans, but in the environment around it. Plants near her lab grew twisted and blackened. Animals became aggressive and disoriented. Even the stars seemed dimmer when viewed through telescopes aligned with the core's emissions. It was as if the very fabric of reality recoiled from its presence. Despite these warnings, pressure mounted to use the core more aggressively. Some believed it should be deployed as a deterrent, keeping potential enemies at bay. Others argued for offensive strikes, targeting known Quartary strongholds before they could regroup. Elena resisted these calls, knowing the risks involved. Every activation of the core destabilized space-time further, creating ripples that could attract unwanted attention from other corners of the galaxy. Her fears proved justified when strange signals began appearing in deep space scans. At first, they were faint and sporadic, easy to dismiss as anomalies. But as the weeks passed, the signals grew stronger and more frequent. They originated from beyond the edges of explored space, areas shrouded in mystery and myth. Scientists speculated about ancient civilizations or rogue AI systems, but Elena suspected something far worse. The Quartary hadn't acted alone. Someone or something had sent them to Earth. And now, whatever it was coming closer, General Hawley convened an emergency meeting aboard the Vanguard Dawn. Representatives from Earth's governments, military leaders, and top scientists gathered to discuss the growing threat. Elena presented her findings, showing data that suggested the signals were deliberate attempts to locate the Erebus core. "Whoever is sending these signals knows what we've done," she said. "They're looking for us." The room fell silent. No one needed to ask what would happen if they found Earth. With the core active, humanity had become a beacon in the darkness, drawing predators like moths to a flame. The question wasn't whether they would come, it was when Hawley broke the silence. "Then we prepare," he said firmly. "We fortify our defenses, train our troops, and make sure the core is ready. If they want to fight, we'll give them one." Preparations began in earnest. Earth's militaries mobilized en masse, constructing new ships and retrofitting old ones with advanced weaponry. Engineers worked tirelessly to improve the core's stability, hoping to reduce its toll on users. Propaganda campaigns rallied citizens, urging them to support the war effort. Posters plastered across cities bore slogans like "Earth will not fall" and "Armed with Erebus, we stand strong." Yet beneath the surface, cracks widened. Rogue factions formed, seeking to seize control of the core for their own purposes. Terrorist attacks rocked major cities, targeting government facilities and military installations. Rumors spread of secret experiments gone wrong, of people vanishing after being exposed to Erebus energy. Trust eroded, replaced by paranoia and suspicion. Through it all, Elena remained focused on her work. She knew the core was humanity's greatest asset and its greatest liability. Its power could save Earth, but it could also destroy it. As she delved deeper into its mysteries, she uncovered fragments of knowledge buried in its structure. Symbols etched into its surface hinted at an origin far older than humanity. Ancient civilizations had wielded Erebus before, only to fall victim to its destructive nature. Elena realized the core wasn't just a tool, it was a test. A challenge to see if humanity was worthy of wielding such power. The final piece of the puzzle came unexpectedly. During a routine scan of the core, Elena detected a faint resonance emanating from it. At first, she thought it was interference, but as she analyzed the signal, she recognized it. It was the same frequency embedded in the core theory's original transmission, the warning meant for those who could decipher it. The message was simple yet chilling. Do not awaken what cannot be controlled. Elena shared her discovery with Hale and Ria, who listened in stunned silence. The implications were clear. Humanity had stepped onto a path it might not survive. The core was a double-edged sword, capable of protecting Earth, but equally likely to doom it. Yet abandoning it wasn't an option. The core theory, or whoever followed them, wouldn't hesitate to destroy humanity if given the chance. In the end, Elena made a decision. She would stay with the core, guarding it until the bitter end. She knew the risks, knew it might consume her entirely, but she also knew someone had to bear the burden. The battle was over, but the scars it left behind ran deep. Earth had survived the core theory's second assault, thanks to the Erebus core and the sacrifices of countless soldiers. Yet victory came at a cost that no one could ignore. Cities lay in ruins, their streets empty, except for the rubble-strewn remnants of buildings. Colonies on Mars and the Moon were abandoned, deemed too dangerous to rebuild after the attacks. Billions mourned the loss of loved ones, while survivors struggled to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Dr. Elena Voss stood alone in her lab beneath Antarctica, staring at the Erebus core. Its dark surface shimmered faintly, as if alive with its own energy. She had used it twice now, each time feeling more of herself slip away. Her body was frail, her movements slow and deliberate. Dark circles ringed her eyes, and her skin had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality. But it wasn't just her physical state that worried her, it was her mind. Memories flickered in and out like static on an old television screen. Sometimes she couldn't remember simple things, like where she placed her notes or what day it was. Other times, she felt the core whispering to her, urging her to use it again. Elena knew the truth about the core. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a parasite. Every time she activated it, it consumed part of her life force, leaving her weaker than before. And yet, humanity depended on it. The Core-3 had retreated once more, but they weren't gone. Their ships still lingered in the outer reaches of the solar system, watching and waiting. Worse still, the strange signals Elena had detected earlier grew stronger every day. Something or someone was coming, something far greater than the Core-3. Whatever it was, it wanted the core. General Marcus Hala faced his own challenges. As leader of the United Terran Alliance, UTA, he bore the weight of responsibility for Earth's defense. But unity among humanity's factions was crumbling. Governments argued over how to handle the core, some wanting to destroy it, others insisting on using it preemptively against potential threats. Corporations lobbied for access, seeing profit in its power. Even within the UTA, divisions emerged. Some believed the core should be shared openly, while others thought it should remain under strict military control. Amid this turmoil, rogue groups formed, determined to claim the core for themselves. They called themselves the Children of Erebus, fanatics who viewed the core as divine and Elena as its prophet. Others, like the Iron Hand, sought to seize the core by force, believing it was too dangerous to leave in anyone's hands. Assassination attempts on Elena became frequent, forcing her to move between hidden labs and safe houses. Each attack reminded her of the burden she carried, not just the core itself, but the decisions she had made in wielding it. Captain Rhea Torres tried to focus on rebuilding the fleet, training new pilots to defend Earth, but guilt gnawed at her constantly. Too many of her comrades had died during the battles. She often replayed their final moments in her mind, wondering if she could have done something differently to save them. Her nights were restless, filled with dreams of burning ships and screams echoing through the void. By day, she threw herself into her work, pushing her recruits harder than ever. If another war was coming, and she had no doubt it was, Earth needed fighters ready to face it. As months passed, whispers spread of a new enemy gathering beyond the edges of explored space. Scientists tracked the mysterious signals, piecing together fragments of information. What they found chilled them to the bone. The signals originated from a civilization older than any known to humanity. They called themselves the Void Wardens, guardians of the galaxy tasked with containing dangerous forces. According to ancient texts recovered from long-dead alien races, the Void Wardens had once wielded Erebus energy themselves, but at great cost. Entire star systems had been wiped out when the power spiraled out of control. Now, they had returned, drawn by the core's activation. One evening, Elena received a transmission unlike any she had seen before. It came not in words or images, but in sensations, feelings of sorrow, regret, and warning. Embedded within the signal was a single phrase: "Prepare yourselves, for the reckoning is nigh." Elena immediately forwarded the data to General Halley, who convened an emergency meeting aboard the Vanguard Dawn. Representatives from Earth's governments, military leaders, and top scientists gathered to discuss the implications. "This changes everything," Halley said grimly, pacing the room. "If the Void Wardens are coming, we're looking at a threat far beyond anything we've faced so far." Elena nodded. "They don't want to conquer us. They want to contain us to make sure we can't misuse the core. But containment for them might mean destruction." The room fell silent. No one needed to ask what that meant. If the Void Wardens decided humanity posed too great a risk, they wouldn't hesitate to erase Earth from existence. The question was whether humanity could avoid that fate, or whether it was already too late. In the weeks that followed, preparations intensified. Earth's militaries worked around the clock to fortify defenses, building massive orbital platforms armed with experimental weapons. Engineers designed new ships capable of withstanding the Void Warden's technology, though no one knew exactly what form it would take. Propaganda campaigns urged citizens to support the war effort, painting the Void Wardens as invaders bent on enslaving humanity. Few dared speak aloud the real reason for the coming conflict: the core. Meanwhile, Elena continued her research, driven by desperation. She scoured ancient records, searching for clues about the Void Wardens and their methods. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The Void Wardens didn't fight like other civilizations. They didn't rely on brute force or superior numbers. Instead, they manipulated reality itself, bending space and time to trap their enemies in endless loops of suffering. Their goal wasn't victory. It was annihilation. Elena realized there was only one way to stand against such a foe. To fight the Void Wardens, humanity would need to master the very force they feared. But mastering Erebus required more than science. It demanded sacrifice. Each activation of the core drained the user further, until eventually there was nothing left. Elena understood what that meant. Someone would have to give everything to wield the core fully, becoming one with its power. She kept her thoughts to herself, knowing no one would approve of her plan. General Halle and Captain Ria Torres had become close allies, trusting her judgment despite the risks involved. But even they wouldn't accept the idea of her sacrificing herself. So Elena worked quietly, preparing for the inevitable showdown. She modified the core, making it easier to channel its energy without losing control. She recorded messages explaining her reasoning, hoping future generations would understand why she did what she did. As the Void Warden's fleet approached, Earth braced for impact. Their ships were unlike anything humanity had seen before, vast organic structures that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. They moved slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the anticipation of destruction. Panic swept across the planet as people prepared for the end. Cities emptied, families huddled together in underground bunkers, and prayers rose to the heavens. On the bridge of the Vanguard Dawn, Elena placed her hand on the core one last time. Her body trembled, but her resolve was unshakable. Around her, General Halle and Captain Ria Torres watched silently, knowing there was no turning back. Pilots scrambled to their ships, engines roared to life, and weapons armed themselves for the fight ahead. The Void Wardens struck first, unleashing waves of energy that warped space-time itself. Stars dimmed, planets shifted in their orbits, and gravitational fields collapsed under the strain. Humanity's forces fought valiantly, but their weapons barely scratched the surface of the Warden's ships. One by one, human vessels fell, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the enemy's power. Then Elena activated the core. A surge of energy erupted from the Vanguard Dawn, tearing through the fabric of reality. Space twisted and fractured, creating storms of light and shadow that engulfed the Void Warden's fleet. For the first time, the invaders faltered, their perfect coordination disrupted by the chaotic force unleashed upon them. But the toll was immense. Elena felt her consciousness dissolving, merging with the core's energy. Pain shot through her body, blinding and unbearable. Yet she held on, focusing every ounce of her willpower on containing the storm. Slowly, the Void Warden's ships began to retreat, pulled apart by the maelstrom she had created. When the battle ended, the Vanguard Dawn drifted silently in the void. The core pulsed faintly, its surface cracked and scorched. Elena was gone, her body reduced to ash. But her voice remained, echoing in the minds of those who had witnessed her sacrifice. "This is our legacy," she had said in her final message. "Not the power of Erebus, but the courage to use it wisely. Protect it or destroy it. The choice is yours." Earth stood victorious, but forever changed. The Erebus core vanished, taking Elena with it. Legends spoke of her sacrifice, calling her the Mother of Stars. Humanity vowed never again to seek such dangerous power. Though whispers persisted of other civilizations seeking to reclaim Erebus for themselves. And so, Earth moved forward, united by the memory of those who had given everything to ensure its survival. The Void Wardens were gone, their fleet retreating into the depths of space. But the victory felt hollow, like ashes in the wind. Humanity had survived, but at a cost that could never be undone. The Erebus core, the source of Earth's newfound power, had disappeared along with Dr. Elena Voss. Her sacrifice echoed across the planet, a somber reminder of the price paid for survival. Yet even as people mourned her loss, whispers of unease spread. What had humanity truly unleashed? And what remained of the dangerous force that had saved them? In the weeks following the battle, Earth began to rebuild. Cities rose from the ruins, their skylines jagged and scarred but defiant. People returned to their lives, though the shadow of war lingered in every corner. Families gathered around flickering holograms of Elena, calling her the Mother of Stars. Statues were erected in her honor, and schools taught her story as a lesson in courage and sacrifice. Yet behind closed doors, debates raged about the future of Erebus energy. Some argued it was too dangerous to pursue further, while others believed humanity couldn't afford to abandon such a powerful tool. General Marcus Hawley struggled to keep the peace. As leader of the United Terran Alliance, UTA, he bore the weight of decision-making in a fractured world. Governments clamored for control of whatever remnants of Erebus technology might remain. Corporations lobbied for patents, eager to exploit its potential for profit. Rogue factions continued to operate in secret, searching for traces of the core or trying to replicate its effects. Even within the UTA, divisions emerged. Some saw the core as a curse, a Pandora's box best left sealed. Others viewed it as humanity's greatest weapon, one they needed to master before another threat arrived. Captain Ria Torres found herself adrift in this new reality. Once a symbol of hope, she now felt like a relic of a darker time. Her role in training pilots had ended. There were no more recruits to prepare, no battles on the horizon. She spent her days wandering the streets of Luna Prime, watching workers clear debris and rebuild shattered structures. Nights were harder. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying memories of comrades lost in battle. Sometimes she dreamed of Elena, standing beside the glowing core, her voice calm but firm. This is our legacy, not the power itself, but the choice we make with it. Ria didn't know what choice to make. Part of her wanted to destroy any trace of Erebus forever, to ensure no one else suffered its toll. Another part feared abandoning it entirely. If another enemy came stronger than the Quarthery or the Void Wardens, what would protect Earth then? The question haunted her, gnawing at her resolve. Meanwhile, strange phenomena began occurring across the solar system. Space-time anomalies rippled through regions where the core had been used, creating distortions that baffled scientists. Ships reported encountering areas where stars seemed to blink out of existence, only to reappear moments later. On Mars, entire colonies experienced brief periods of complete darkness, as if the sun itself had vanished. Reports poured in of animals behaving strangely, plants growing in unnatural patterns, and gravitational fields fluctuating without explanation. Dr. Annika Patel, a physicist who had worked closely with Elena, led efforts to study these changes. Using data collected during the final battle, she discovered something alarming. The core's activation hadn't just destabilized local space-time, it had created fractures in the fabric of reality itself. These fractures acted like wounds, slowly spreading outward and affecting everything they touched. Worse still, the fractures seemed to attract attention from forces beyond human comprehension. Ancient civilizations had warned of beings that thrived in chaos, drawn to places where order broke down. Annika shared her findings with General Hawley, who listened in grim silence. "We thought we were done with enemies," he said finally. "But it looks like we've opened a door we can't close." "What do you mean?" Annika asked, though deep down, she already knew. "The core isn't just gone," Hawley replied. "It's out there somewhere, and whatever it's doing, it's calling things to us. Things we're not ready for." Sure enough, reports soon emerged of unidentified ships appearing near the edges of explored space. Unlike the sleek designs of the Corthery or the organic forms of the Void Wardens, these vessels were chaotic and shifting, their shapes constantly changing as if made of liquid metal. Scientists dubbed them the Fractured Ones, theorizing they were drawn to the instability caused by the core. Wherever they went, destruction followed. Planets crumbled, stars dimmed, and entire star systems collapsed under the weight of their presence. Panic swept across Earth as news of the Fractured Ones spread. People fled cities, fearing the worst. Governments declared states of emergency, urging citizens to take shelter underground. Militaries scrambled to prepare defenses, but no one knew how to fight an enemy that defied logic and physics. Weapons designed to combat conventional foes proved useless against the Fractured Ones, whose very existence warped the battlefield. Amid the chaos, Rhea received a message from General Hawley. He wanted to see her immediately aboard the Vanguard Dawn. When she arrived, she found him standing in the command center, staring at a blank screen. Beside him stood Annika Patel, her face pale and drawn. "We need your help," Hawley said without preamble. "The Fractured Ones are heading straight for Earth. If we don't stop them, it's over." "How?" Rhea asked, her voice sharp with frustration. "We don't even know what they are." "That's why we're bringing back the core," Hawley replied. Rhea stared at him, stunned. "You think that's a good idea? After everything it's done?" "It's the only idea we have," Annika interjected. "If we can recreate the core, or at least mimic its effects, we might be able to stabilize the fractures before the Fractured Ones reach us. And if we fail?" Rhea shot back. "Then we'll all die anyway," Hawley said bluntly. "At least this way, we have a chance." Reluctantly, Rhea agreed to help. Together, the three of them formed a team dedicated to finding a solution. They scoured Elena's old research, piecing together fragments of information about the core's structure and function. Engineers worked tirelessly to build a replica, using materials salvaged from the original lab. Pilots trained for a mission unlike any other, preparing to deploy the device directly into the heart of the fractures as days turned into weeks. Progress was slow and fraught with setbacks. Each test of the replica core resulted in catastrophic failures, causing explosions that destroyed entire labs. Workers grew restless, their fear of the project outweighing their loyalty to the cause. Whispers of mutiny spread among the crew, and several key members quit, refusing to participate in what they called a suicide mission. Despite the challenges, Rhea refused to give up. She remembered Elena's words, echoing in her mind like a mantra. "This is our legacy, not the power itself, but the choice we make with it." Slowly, she began to understand what Elena had meant. The core wasn't inherently good or evil. It was a reflection of those who wielded it. Humanity's true test wasn't mastering the power. It was deciding how to use it responsibly. Finally, after months of effort, the team completed the replica core. It was smaller and less refined than the original, but it pulsed with the same dark energy. Rhea volunteered to lead the mission, knowing the risks involved. If the core failed, she would be the first casualty. But if it succeeded, she might save billions. On the day of the launch, crowds gathered to watch as the Vanguard Dawn prepared for departure. Pilots climbed into their ships, engines roared to life, and weapons armed themselves for the final stand. Rhea stood alone in the command center, staring at the replica core. Her hands trembled as she placed them on its surface, feeling the familiar surge of energy coursing through her body. Pain shot through her limbs, but she gritted her teeth and held on, focusing all her strength on stabilizing the fractures. Outside, the fractured ones loomed closer, their shifting forms blotting out the stars. Explosions lit up the void as human ships engaged the enemy, buying time for the Vanguard Dawn to reach the heart of the fractures. One by one, the defenders fell, their sacrifices ensuring the mission's success. When the Vanguard Dawn reached its destination, Rhea activated the core. A surge of energy erupted, tearing through the fabric of reality. Space twisted and fractured, creating storms of light and shadow that engulfed the fractured ones. Slowly, the anomalies began to stabilize, sealing the fractures and banishing the invaders. But the toll was immense. Rhea felt her consciousness dissolving, merging with the core's energy. Pain shot through her body, winding and unbearable. Yet she held on, channeling every ounce of her willpower into containing the storm. When it ended, the Vanguard Dawn drifted silently in the void. The core pulsed faintly, its surface cracked and scorched. Rhea was gone, her body reduced to ash. Back on Earth, people watched the skies, waiting for signs of the fractured one's return. But none came. Slowly, cautiously, they began to rebuild once more. The replica core vanished, taking Rhea with it. Legends spoke of her sacrifice, calling her the light of humanity. Like Elena before her, she had given everything to ensure Earth's survival. Years passed, and humanity moved forward, united by the memory of those who had fallen. The Erebus core became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of seeking power without understanding its consequences.